How's everyone tonight? Welcome to everyone. We're really honored to have with us tonight Matt Holford, Chief Technology Officer from DoSomething.org. Matt heads up technology, data, and product for DoSomething.org, a digital platform that mobilizes individuals, young adults, around volunteering and making a difference in their community. And we often talk about today's generation and they're so different and are they me-oriented? And DoSomething.org proves that they are we-oriented. They really want to make a difference, and his platform enables teams to organize around that. Let's give Matt a very warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Elaine and the rest of the organizers. I have 57 slides, but we're going to fit it in 30 minutes. We're going to keep it moving because when I give talks like this at night, I tend to focus on the one person in the front who's like, and I want to try to keep you all awake. So I'm going to keep the images moving like real fast, okay? I'm the CTO at DoSomething. As Elaine said, I've been there for 6.5 years. And I currently head up all the engineering, data, design, product management until our head of product returns from paternity leave after 6 months, which is tomorrow morning at 9. So my job's about to get a lot easier. I'm going to talk about DoSomething in a little bit of detail so you get a sense of what we do, what we've been working on for 26 years. And then how we've evolved as a data-driven organization and kind of what that has looked like in the time that I've been there, especially, starting a little bit before me. And then just a kind of glimpse at the end into what we're working on next year that involves data. And then we should have some time for questions and answers at that. All right? Who we are and what we do. So we describe ourselves as the largest tech platform exclusively for young people and social change. And by tech platform, for us that means we're a membership platform. So we have members between 13 and the mid-20s, primarily in the US. We'll get into some more numbers in a second. Tech platform because we deliver on our mission by partly building technology that gets young people to volunteer. So we have two primary channels, the web and SMS. We're running a number of these different cause-related volunteering campaigns at any given time. We have about 60 staffers, mostly in New York, a few remote. This is us wearing our Barack Obama quotes. The election day 2016, before the results, everyone's very smiling. We have 5 million members, and we have about 300 campaigns, 300 different ways for young people to volunteer. In surveys that we've done in the past, we found out that one of the biggest challenges for the 80% of young people who want to volunteer but don't is that they don't know how. So our job is to give structured ways for young people to volunteer in issues they care about so that while they're young and forming their identities, we can get them in the lifelong habit of volunteering. Our members are in every area code in the United States, and we have people completing these campaigns right now in 130 countries in addition. But we're entering in 2020 the third year of a 3-year strategic plan that has us focusing on civic engagement in the United States. So we've been very much focused on the US the last few years. That will last through the end of 2020, the general election, and then I imagine we'll turn our attention abroad again and start developing models there. So the mission is to create the most socially conscious generation ever. One of the ways that we think about this and make it concrete is that in 20 years, one of our members could be running for president. So we want to make sure that person is fiercely engaged with their community and in the habit and considers themselves to be a volunteer. I took some slides because I have a half an hour. I took some slides from one of our marketing decks because I think it helps introduce why it's important to lead with data in any endeavor, but especially when we're talking about young people. Because the stuff we get from the media about first millennials and now Gen Z can sometimes take us in the wrong direction. There are a lot of scare headlines for years about the industries millennials were killing, and now it's the industries that Gen Z is killing. Print, malls. Everyone's always killing malls. Football, music festivals, cash, driving, and the English language. So what we need to do is actually look at the data about this generation. And the truth is that 2/3 of them have volunteered at least once in the last year. So our challenge is to take that urge, that potential energy, and over again, convert it into actual volunteering. So we need to design ways to activate young people, tap into that energy, get them all focused at the same time in the same cause, and then bring the story back to them about the aggregate impact they made so that they feel this satisfaction and the sense of community from doing all this stuff together. We run surveys every year of our own members, our 5 million, and of the general population, same age group. And one thing that stands out, this is from last year's survey, one thing that stands out is that if you take any given cause area that you might identify with the younger generation, they care about all of them pretty equally. I don't know if you can see this, but up at the top, there's 71% of them care about sexual harassment, the median 68% racial equality, and down at the bottom, which is only 65%, 6-point difference, is homelessness and poverty. So we're not going to necessarily activate them or differentiate ourselves by picking one cause area that all young people care about, because the truth is they care. They look around their communities, they see things that are wrong, and they want to make a change. So we dig into the data about what they care about and use that to create actionable campaigns that can get them to make a cause in an impact area and then turn them onto the habit. Here, this is again from our survey from this year, bullying is the most common cause area that they took action on already recently. And if you have kids, if you've been in schools recently, you probably noticed that bullying and mental health and that like psychological safety in schools is everywhere. The No Place for Hate Anti-Defamation League campaign is everywhere. It's in my daughter's public school. She's in 5th grade. And so this is very much on their minds. So what we did was design an action around this fact, that 1/5 of young people, teenagers, adolescents and teens, have experienced cyberbullying, and most recently on Instagram, which is a dominant platform for direct messaging anyway. So it can be an attack vector for cyberbullying. Instagram provides ways to report bullying accounts, and young people have access to that already. They don't all know, A, that they can do it, and B, that it's anonymous, that they can do it safely. So part of this campaign was about educating that they can do this, and then getting them to tell us how many reports that they made of bullying accounts. This is what it looked like on the web. We also run these as structured interactions over SMS. So when we send out an SMS broadcast to our members, we can tell them about the same thing. It's managed as content on the back end, the same way we would manage some of this content on the web, so that we can tell them how to take action over SMS in a structured conversation and get them to do the same thing there. So our goal was to get 25,000 accounts reported. In the 2 months we ran this, we got 65,000. Sometimes you got to set a goal. Forecasting is not perfect. In this case, we not quite tripled it, we more than doubled it, and we were pretty happy about that. And now our job at that point is a marketing and a storytelling job to bring this back and say, look how much safer you made this platform for people like you. And as a result, just about 90% of the people who did this said that they were more likely to do it again in the future. And that's what we like to see. They did the thing with us, they understand how it works, and they're instilling a habit in themselves. A second campaign just going to show you two kind of different ones. This is the second one, based on this idea that when a young person enters a homeless shelter in the United States, the number one thing they ask for is a pair of jeans, because it helps you feel normal, helps you feel like you look like the other kids in school, regardless of where you slept last night. And it's a thing that all young people have. They all have jeans. So for 10 years we've been running this, and the basic idea is, we just launched it again. So the basic idea is around the holidays, when people are getting jeans for gifts anyway, we ask them to take their lightly used jeans that are still wearable and bring them to a local homeless shelter. Some years we run it with Aeropostale so they can bring it to the mall. And some years we give them a shelter location finder so they can find the one near them. So I picked one year, that was close to a round number. That year, in the 2 months we ran the campaign, young people donated over 1 million pairs of jeans across the United States. And they send back photos that look like this. They'll do it in clubs, like volunteering key clubs. They'll do it with Eagles. And through this, we got jeans to half of all young people who went through homeless shelters that year. So that's the kind of scale that we operate at. It generates a lot of data. So I'll talk about how we've evolved our data practice along with this work that we do. No one is yet asleep. I'll keep this moving. DataDriven Nonprofit. What is a tech nonprofit? Who was here last month to see Jake Garcia from Candid? Yeah, great. Their entire business is all about data and making data available about nonprofits and funding and outcomes to other nonprofits and foundations. But truly, every nonprofit is an organization that's generating some kind of data. And here's some sources like what you're spending on, strategic budgeting, budget lines, actuals, the outcomes of your programs, marketing, what you're spending on marketing, impressions, user behavior and activities and events, the logs that your applications generate. It's all data. And it's kind of like technology in nonprofits. I think that there are two basic categories of nonprofits: the ones that realize they're dependent on technology and the ones that just haven't figured it out yet. And for us, this data-driven nonprofit is a subset of the first category. We know we're relying on technology and data, and there's a subset of nonprofits, including Jake's organization, Candid, that deliver on their mission through developing technology. So they tend to have software engineering and product engineering teams. So the questions here are, how do we make our data reliable? How do we make all these data sets accessible? So reliable that we believe it, accessible in that we have it in one place and things aren't strewn across a whole bunch of systems and in Google Drive. And then how do we use it to produce actual insights, but then how do we use those insights to change our behavior, actually make operational, strategic, tactical decisions? And so I think that the data-driven nonprofit is the one that eventually gets to the last point. They're accessing this stuff, they're flooding the organization with the context of data that everyone believes and can access, and they're using that to make decisions. In 2012, DoSomething had gone for a round of funding, which looks like startup funding, except no one gets equity in anything, except the earth. And the goal of that funding in a kind of 3-year period was to build up a data and technology practice. So first they hired a data person. In 2013, they hired me. And we built up this team. And the first question they had for the data scientists was, how many members do we have? It was a membership platform, and they wanted to know how many members they had because they didn't know. So that's a good question. And he had to unpack that using the systems they had at the time into 3 basic questions. Where are our data? What is a member? Let's write it down and define it, codify it. And then who fits that definition? How many people are they? When did they start fitting the definition? When did they stop? And it was that year that we defined how many members we had, which I think that year was 1.5 million, and set a goal of getting to 5 million in 5 years. And so they hired me as part of trying to scale up the operation. And so I came on, just for context, and this was the size of the team. There was also the data scientist and eventually a data engineer in the first couple of years. We had a team of, what is this, like 5 engineers, some management, and a product team. So we were building things that were generating data. We didn't have it all in one place. We had a bunch of stuff, though. We had application databases storing user records and activity. We were operating already at a pretty big scale over the SMS channel, but we couldn't bring the data in-house entirely. We were using a third party to deliver and receive SMS messages, and our ability to access data was limited by their data API and how hard we could hit it, actually. And the same with the email channel. We did run annual surveys, so we had data from that as well. And when we needed to produce insights and reports, it was custom work that the data scientists that we hired would do. So manually create reports, and they were great, and they helped us at the time, but it was a laborious process that was blocked by one person. So fast forwarding to now, we have one big team, a platform team, and then a data team that is right now a full-time data scientist, 3 data engineers, which is a lot for a 60-person organization, and it's a lot for one data scientist, but we've been building up a lot of infrastructure recently, getting our kind of data pipelines in order, and this is the look of it right now. We're actually hiring for a director of data and insights, because our last one left for the Pete Buttigieg campaign in the summer. Good luck to them. And so that will eventually have a director level person there too. So now our systems look like a centralized data warehouse, which we can, if anyone's interested, we can go into the weeds, but it's an RDS Postgres instance in AWS. The tool that we give to all staff and we all use ourselves is Looker. People use Looker? Yeah, okay. We pay for a service that manages the actual pipelines that just bring the data in from a whole bunch of different sources. That's called Fivetran. I'll show a diagram for this, but we completely reworked our SMS system in 2017 to handle the scale we need to operate at now, which is often 3 million broadcasts in a very small time frame, and then getting responses back from that and handling that in like a conversational context. And that has sent all the data streams through our systems, so we can store all that with full fidelity. Our email data, we still use a provider, but we have better ingestion systems for that. We have web analytics feeding back into our warehouse through Snowplow, which is an analytics, essentially an open source service. Voter information, because we started registering people to vote at scale last year. Rock the Vote's our big partner. We registered 115,000 young people to vote last year, and when you register someone to vote through Rock the Vote, you can get a delivery back of that person's info, and then we could measure the success of that effort against actual voter files by state, and Catalyst is a service that lets you do that. We still do annual member and GenPop, general population surveys, and the reporting now is self-service and automated through Looker. So a self-serve, just for folks who haven't looked at Looker before, this is kind of where we're at now. 7 years ago, we said, how many members do we have? And now, anyone who's running one of these 300 volunteer campaigns can go look it up in Looker. They can get up-to-date, usually with a 24-hour lag, up-to-date performance data on how many people have signed up, how many people have completed or reported back, how many people have done it over the web versus SMS, and so on. We have dashboards by team. So this is one of the dashboards that the marketing team's concerned with about user acquisition. And we're able to track our performance there as well. For automated report delivery, one of the challenges of having a bunch of data and trying to get it to the right people is knowing who needs to know what, when, and making them aware that it even exists. So one of the ways we try to work on this is to just deliver things to Slack channels on a very regular basis. Not everyone opens this report every day, but everyone sees it there every morning at 8:30 or 8:32. It takes a dashboard from Looker. It generates an expandable, it's a ping, but you can blow it up and look at the individual graphs here. And we have them going to different channels by what they're interested in. Here we go. So here's that blown up. Any given morning, people can see kind of our monthly active members. It's like MAUs and campaign completions by month. And so now our data sources that we're bringing into our warehouse are events over the web and SMS and email. Then user activities. So those are when a young person signs up for a campaign, when they register with us for the first time, when they complete a campaign and complete some of the smaller actions within a campaign, like sharing an anti-bullying playbook with their friends on social media. We'll track that share event too. We have A/B test experiments, the results of that flowing in. We still do surveys and all the voter registration data. So just one example is web analytics, and we'll look at another example after that. Snowplow is the service. It is an open source service that's free to deploy yourselves, and then they have paid hosted versions of it too. This is their graphic, but it's a great graphic. So you can take all of your different event generation systems and services out here in channels. For us, it's really email, mobile, as SMS, and the web, and we have a bunch of third-party services as well. Those head through a system that can kind of validate what kind of data you're sending through and the payload. They can enrich the data with other sources. So if we have a user clicking on our website, we can enrich that part of the way down with other information we have about that user into the payload so that when it gets to the warehouse, it's a rich event. Some of the work that is involved with Snowplow is understanding if a person with this device clicked on these 20 things in a half an hour, we need to be able to sew that together into some understanding of a session. It was the same person in the same amount of time interacting with our website. That goes into the warehouse. So for us, this is a dependency mapping of data tables. We've got a Snowplow event. It gets fed into a big table of raw events. It gets enriched and partially cooked into enriched web events. We gather it into an idea of discrete sessions, and then that goes into a table of sessions that we surface in Looker that we can then query other things across. On the SMS side, this looks like a very different thing. 3 million people get a message that says, do you want to do this campaign? Here's the basic idea. You might win a scholarship if you do it. Do you want in, yes or no? And then we wait for their response. If they write back yes, we have signed them up for the campaign. We create an association between the user record, which we already have, that's how we have their phone number, and the campaign they just signed up for. Then we can bring them through a structured interaction that gets them to understand, in this case it was about National School Walkout. In case for Teens for Genes, it's like where to collect genes, how to get ready to do this, when the due date is, etc. And this, here's a better one. I'll just show you that the context diagram for our whole SMS land involves a whole bunch of different systems now. When we started doing this, it was just us and our SMS provider, and that was kind of it. And in 2017, we completely outgrew that provider, and we needed to build up our own system that was using Twilio, which is like the biggest SMS delivery platform, and the system that we use to segment and prepare broadcasts over email and SMS, which is called Customer IO. So we actually decided, because of the funky two-way messaging that we do at scale, we needed to build these segments, which can be up to 3 million people, send them internally through our systems. The purple ones are us. internally through our systems into our own chat bot, and then that goes out to Twilio. So the cost of that is we need to build things that can scale up to 3 million messages in a small period of time. The benefit of that is everything routes through our systems now, so we just save it all. Oh yeah, I blew that up because it was easier to point out. So this looks like messages through SMS and the performance data of that stuff, which is important. Did it get delivered to someone's phone? Did they respond? That gets split into outbound and inbound. That goes into our one single log of all member events across all channels in our system, and that eventually gets cooked into a user activity table, which is what, again, we surface in Looker. All right, a little bit about 2020, and then maybe we'll have time for any questions people have. The two biggest opportunities we have in 2020 that involve data at a pretty fundamental level are voter behavior and modeling our campaign performance. So we registered 118,000 people to vote in 2018. We saw that the majority of them turned out to vote. It's really good, pretty good performance compared against other people who do this for a living, voter reg. And what we want to do is amplify this next year, knowing that it's a general election, knowing that young people care about this more than ever. They're inundated with information. And also the laws are rapidly changing state by state. New York, just this legislative session this year, passed pre-registration laws. So now if you're 16 or 17 in New York State, you can pre-register to vote, and then you're automatically registered when you turn 18. But that's only in 13 or 14 states. So every young person in every state needs to get accurate information about, are they legally registered to vote? When they go to college in a different state, are they still registered to vote? Where do they vote? How do they vote? Absentee, all this stuff. And in order for us to be able to make this work state by state, we need a voter behavior analysis that gives us feedback on how are we doing in each state, registering people to vote. Did the registration go through? How do we activate them over the course of the year so they actually make a plan to vote on election day and turn out? And then the other one is a campaign model. We've been running these volunteer campaigns essentially for 26 years. And sometimes it's still a mystery why one does really, really well. And part of the reason is that there's always more data to overlay onto this model of a campaign that helps us understand, for instance, why did Teens for Genes yield 1 million pairs of jeans in 2012 and then 3 years later yielded like 800,000 pairs? Why does a campaign about fighting bullying maybe work better in February than it does in May? What's going on? And we want to layer in more about our marketing budget, more about seasonality, the seasonality that is important to a young person. We run a campaign about equality and access to proms. And so there's obviously, like, seasonality is pretty obvious sometimes. It's not as obvious other times. That's a look forward into 2020. I think that was about half an hour. Thank you very much for paying attention. Any questions you have?
Thank you, Matt, for inspiring us with that wonderful talk. And now it's time for Q&A. Are there any questions? I'm going to bring my mic because we're recording and we can hear you better.
Do you work primarily in the US, and are there other areas of the world that have some interesting things that are going on that you can note?
Yeah, when I started in 2013, we were actually at the tail end of a project, an initiative to expand into 5 countries in Africa, for reasons that were mysterious to me. But I learned about restricted funding, which I didn't know about before I came to work at DoSomething. We get a lot of money to expand into Africa, and we had to, or give the money back. So we expanded into 5 different countries there, and in the process of that, learned a lot about volunteering behavior and the technology that's available to power that in different countries. Right now there's a DoSomething Indonesia. We recently had DoSomething Brazil, Mexico, UK, Canada, and so we've Portugal. So we've done it in different countries and learned different lessons, but we also know that there are on-the-ground organizations in every single country and in most cities in the world working with young people on volunteering. So I think after we get through this election, we're going to turn back and take all these lessons that we've learned over these 3 years of civic engagement and building up this richer campaign model in the US and look anew at where we can apply it most powerfully with the help of other organizations on the ground in those countries.
A lot of nonprofits these days are being compared akin to your startups or regular companies. And in that context, could you throw more light on revenue model and profitability in terms of your initiative? Because you talk about expansion and fundraising. How do you validate?
Because we're data-driven, we define our goals using that data and the best forecasting we have, and it's also because of the kinds of people who will give us funding when we go out to do that. It's also what they're looking for. So we talk to a lot of the same organizations that fund for-profits, out in Silicon Valley. The Omidyar Network has done 3 rounds with us. Google.org, the Schmidt Foundation, Eric Schmidt, and they want a lot of data. So we need to be able to tell a story about the narrative about where we're going to, and show a data and technology strategy that will get us to that. A lot of the places that fund for-profits also fund nonprofits. I don't always know why. Sometimes it makes them feel better, or they have a certain amount that they've earmarked to fund nonprofits with, and then there are people who just need to park the money at 501c3s. And so what we try to do is show that if they fund us for a specific effort, we are as efficient at achieving that thing as anyone could possibly be. So when we did Voter Reg in 2018, we came back to a lot of those organizations now that we're raising for this next year and gave them a cost per voter reg, and now we can give them a cost per vote, which is very efficient, very competitively efficient. So we need to find an organization that cares about data in a particular cause area to get the funding. But yeah. We're selling, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, karma, right. Yeah, exactly. Now 75-80% of our revenue stream comes from corporate partners. So when we do these campaigns like Teens for Genes and Aeropostale cares about homelessness in the youth population. And so they want to find a partner that can help them make it done with that. CVS cares about secondhand smoke. GM cares about safe driving practices, and so on. So we find each partner and we run these campaigns that they care about, and then we have 280 other ones we're running that don't have funding, but it's that revenue model that lets us run all the other things. Yeah.
Other questions? Any other questions? So I have a question, because you talked to us about your data journey. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about how you started out, though, on that data journey, and do you feel, what situation do you feel you stepped into when you started that data journey? What were some of the challenges that you had, and the path that led you to the success? If you could go into that a little bit more, because data is very difficult for most organizations. It becomes a bottomless pit in time.
Yeah.
You could spend 100% of your time and money just on data. So tell us more about how you started out on that journey.
Well, in the 6.5 years I've been there, obviously the industry of data science, the terminology, the tools, the services have evolved enormously. It's unrecognizable from 2013 what we have access to now, just as services in AWS. It's mind-blowing. And you can definitely go down a rabbit hole, whether you have one engineer or 1,000 dedicated to data engineering, pursuing things that are super awesome for the engineers but don't tell you anything about what you need to be doing. And one of the continual challenges of organizations of all sizes, and I hear CTOs across New York talk about this, is getting value out of their data teams. So for me, I'm not a data science professional. I've, as with everything else, learned what I need to do my job. And for me, the value of it is in providing unifying narratives and helping us set goals that move the organization forward. So the times when it has worked less effectively is when we go down a big data engineering rabbit hole about trying to get from like 99.5% accurate data on our SMS channel to 99.8% accurate data. And it turns out, like at 80% accuracy, we actually knew what we needed to know, which was that, for instance, we can't send a message to a young person on a Saturday morning. That's a good thing to know. And that actually drove a whole bunch of other engineering goals, which was, for instance, to be able to message 3 million people in a tight time window on a Friday so that we could guarantee we were never going to send anyone a message on a Saturday. And so those are the things I look for, the insights, the strategies, and the narratives. And we do as much data science as we need to fill those out and help us have confidence in them and then verify our hypotheses. And you know, the technology that's available to us is constantly causing us to reconsider the kind of buy versus build. With 3 data engineers, it can be tempting to do like a big project that's satisfying to people. It's really worth it to look out and say, who has launched a service or gotten a lot of traction on a service in the last 6-9 months where we could just pay for this? And so Fivetran is an example of that. A year ago, we were running all of our data ingestion jobs via Python scripts running on a Jenkins server that was reporting its failures to Slack and was running on a whole bunch of different schedules and taking different amounts of time, and some would block others, and it was a real pain. And so it took a bunch of engineering attention to keep that thing running. And so we finally made the jump to Fivetran, which was not cheap, especially not cheap for us as a nonprofit. And the theory was that by offloading all of these concerns onto a service, we were going to free up a whole bunch of bandwidth on engineering to look at more valuable things than like, let's keep the Jenkins server patched and figure out why this job blocked this job last night. And it's paid off. We spent a quarter, 1 to 2 quarters, different parts of the team moving everything to Fivetran. It was 1 quarter. We did it pretty quickly. And lo and behold, we had a lot of time to do a lot of other things that were more important. So I think part of the job is constantly looking out at what you're paying your very precious data staff to do and to look at, and think about what has the industry managed to commoditize in this area in the last year. How do we change our strategy based on that?
Thank you. Any other questions?
What are the
I'll just repeat it.
what are the benefits of SMS versus just an app with notifications?
What are the benefits of SMS versus an app with notifications? Well, the benefits are that everyone can receive an SMS message and they don't have to install an app. There are a lot of benefits if someone has installed an app or you've gotten into the kind of progressive web apps system game and people have downloaded that and placed it on their home screen, to being able to push notifications to people's phone. For one, it's way cheaper and you're not dealing with the legal and regulatory vicissitudes of SMS, which are very complicated and vary wildly country to country, and you're not limited by countries in the same way at all anymore. One of the benefits of SMS is that we don't need to do that build in order to get messages to people. Now, that changes every year. So, for instance, when we started experimenting this in 2009, it was because the head of product at the time was trying to get people to write him back, and they weren't responding to his faxes. 2009. And he thought, wow, I actually have, we had clubs, and we had a certain number of club leaders, and they weren't responding to his faxes. He was faxing to like their high schools. And he thought, well, let me just try texting them. And within 5 minutes, like 85% of them had written back. And he was like, Oh my God, because even now, the open rate on SMS is way over 90%. Like the performance of SMS is incredible. And it's on everyone's phone. So that's the power of it. It's more expensive than all of our other infrastructure costs combined. And we're constantly on the lookout for the changes in the regulatory systems that all the big phone companies in the US follow. And if they decide they don't like what you're doing, they can shut you down for like a month. You can just get shut down on the channel for a whole month. And what that means for us is millions of young people not getting messages about volunteering. So we keep looking at this. And my hope is that progressive web apps develop to the point where we can build in and enhance some of the functionality on our web channel so that it's less of a big deal for a young person to pull that app on their phone and get permission for us to push notifications to them. But young people have a very small number of apps that they really use on a constant basis, and we built them before. And we know a bunch of other organizations that built apps before, and unless there's like a core experience that's incredibly valuable to this audience, they probably aren't going to use it. And then having push notifications doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So we're with SMS for the foreseeable future.
Any other questions? Yes.
Have you considered using advertising to help fund your organization?
Have we considered using advertising just as a channel?
Yes. Your cohort is very valuable.
Yes, we do use, we use advertising to achieve our mission and get young people registered to vote and activate them. And when someone searches volunteer at a soup kitchen, we're right there in the results, and we might be there in some of the donated Google inventory we get too. We don't put ads on our service, on our web experience, because one of our rules is we don't raise any money from our members, which is tricky. So like as we grow in a membership organization, it just costs us more money. It doesn't actually make us anything. We can't make any money from these people because it's a really bad idea and we've never even considered it. So that's basically why we don't have advertising. But the thing we have is like branded campaigns about, secondhand smoke, and CVS gets to put their brand on it. And that's been a very reliable, robust way to make 75% of our revenue.
For the anti-bullying campaign, have you gone back to the big social media companies and try to engage with them and say, hey, this is the responses we're getting from?
Yeah, the question is, have we gone back to the social media platforms and shown them the results of the anti-bullying campaigns? We have an occasion. I don't actually think we brought this back to Instagram, but we just finished that particular campaign, I think last month. So we don't have an open channel to these different platforms. Often we have contacts we develop there, and often they're looking for input from us. Yeah. So I imagine we'll be able to advertise this stuff. We talk about this. We talk about these campaigns and the impact of a lot of big like social impact summit kinds of conferences where these folks are there, and that opens up a lot of conversations with them too.
We can take one more question. Do we have any more questions? Okay, last question. Do we have an interest at our org to use data scientists specifically for monitoring and evaluation? We don't actually, no one's asked me that before and I haven't thought about it. We don't actually need to, given the proxy metric that we use that's closest to how we measure our ability to achieve our mission. So the proxy metric, our North Star KPI as an organization, is what we call report backs, which is completed, verified social actions by a member. So we try to get more of those done every year. And that's how we're comfortable measuring our impact on young people over time. And for us, luckily, that is a fairly cut and dry thing that we can measure because we defined it pretty rigorously, and we insist that every campaign we run has some way to measure and aggregate the impact of the campaign, and all that's stored in our data set, and at that point it's like an addition problem
not kind of a domain of data science. Yeah. We use data science to discover insights, trends, new opportunities. That's more where we use it. Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
inspiring
Thanks,
us.
everyone.